Hey, if you like what you hear today on our Splitting Hairs podcast episode and you'd like to hear more content from us, please visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/splittinghairs, and become a member. And by becoming a member, you'll receive very exclusive benefits. How about that, Max?
That's cool.
All right. Welcome back to another edition of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky.
As usual, I'm Max.
And I'm Nicky.
And together we're
Max and Nicky.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing traveling.
What does that mean, traveling? Well, you think, does that sound like a boring topic? It's not going to be.
Why would you even put that in their minds already?
We're going to be talking about...
It's going to be quite interesting. I think
our beef with traveling, but also some of the good things about traveling.
Our beef with traveling, meaning we love beef, and so our beef with traveling.
Mainly,
in a good way.
I think mainly we're going to be talking about specific stories that, some sort of adventurous stories that have happened to us during our travels throughout the world.
Traveling, I think, is a very interesting topic, which is why we're talking about it, Nicky. And why would you ever think that it could be a boring topic for people? It's quite interesting. I think a lot of people would be interested to hear the tales of yesteryear, according to Max and Nicky.
Man, I gotta say, we just turned off our air conditioner to record this podcast, and immediately it's really hot. I mean, for those of you who are tuning in outside of New York City, it is in the 90s right now, Fahrenheit-wise.
The 90s, man.
It's in the 90-degree Fahrenheit range.
What do you mean outside of New York? You mean in New York?
No, for those of you who are tuning in outside of New York are not...
Oh, it sounded like, for those of you who are tuning in outside of New York, that's how it sounded like.
No. For those of you who are tuning in who are not living in New York City... It's really hot right now in New York City.
The only boy living in New York City.
And so you may be asking yourself, if you're watching this podcast, Max and Nicky, you're actually dressed like twins right now. You both have white shirts on.
Well, hold on. We're the white T-shirt boys for today. I was going to mention.
Well, one of the reasons is because it's so hot. We're kind of wearing our undershirts, and that's just the way it is.
I mean, not that I always wear an undershirt. You're making it seem like we're wearing like we always wear undershirts.
Well, when I wear a button-down shirt, what I usually do.
When I wear a shirt with buttons, I will wear a white undershirt. Yes. But if I'm wearing a T-shirt, then no.
Okay. Any station business we got going on today?
Station business.
We've got our final live stream coming up.
This is how you just said it. We've got our final live stream coming up.
Well, I'm noticing that I sound a little stuffed up right now for some reason, and I'm trying to avoid that. I think it's because I'm tired right now, but also I don't know.
Sometimes you sit like this, and you're kind of like this, and it makes it seem sort of, you have an air of just sort of this, almost, this pretentiousness to it.
It is splitting hairs. We've got to be pretentious on this show.
No, but you just have this sort of like, I'm smug. There's a smugness about it.
Look, this is a comfortable way for me to sit.
This is how he's sitting. It's kind of like this.
You can't hear that you can't hear the way I'm sitting right now.
Yeah. Well, how do you know? Let them decide that for themselves. Maybe they can hear the way you're sitting.
The way Nicky is sitting. And this is Nicky speaking.
Well, let me just say, Nicky's got his mic closer to his mouth, which is maybe why he sounds, maybe to some of you, he might sound a little more resonant. But
there it is. You've got it right on your nose.
Although maybe Nicky does have a little bit of a deeper voice than I do. But I will say,
when we're singing, though, Max can go a little bit lower than I can, and I can sing a little bit higher than. But I can sing a little bit higher than him.
But I will say though, maybe I have a little bit of a softer touch to my singing than Nicky's. No.
Well, you've got a certain max quality that cannot be replicated.
I would say maybe not a softer quality, because Nicky can get quite soft. I mean a sort of maybe a
more of a
just a lighter
ingenue, if you will, if there were a male ingenue.
An innocence to it, I suppose.
An innocence. There's more of an innocence to his voice.
But
I would agree with that.
But here's the thing. The reason my mic, though, is not as
I'm
close...
more of a weathered sort of singer, actually.
Oh, are you?
No, I'm joking.
You Will Arnett all of a sudden?
I'm not.
Or something?
No, I was trying to sound like Johnny Cash. Find your soulmate, Homer.
A boy named Sue. Whatever.
That ring of fire.
Well,
that
anyway,
ring of fire.
You might ask, well, Max, why don't you put the mic...
No, actually, really, I sing in a very sort of... I'd like to describe my voice as not raspy like the way I was doing.
Okay, come on.
It is soft as well.
Well, if you want to listen to... You can compare. If you just listen to our songs, you can go to Bandcamp. What is it?
maxandnicky.com you can go to maxandnicky.bandcamp.com or littleperson.bandcamp.com.
All right. So anyway, I was mentioning, though, Nicky's mic is closer to his mouth right now than mine is. For one, Nicky feels more comfortable with his mic position than mine. If you're holding
this is really not that interesting.
Okay, but let me just finish this.
I'm just saying.
Let me just finish.
This is so not interesting.
Can I finish? I'm just going to say, just to get it out there, is that the reason for that is my mic cover is the pop filter is... It's a bit dusty right now. It needs to be cleaned. And I don't want to get too close to my mouth because I've been, inhaling and making me cough.
Dust mites. Ooh. No, truth be told,
it's not dust mites. It's just dust.
I think that could be another reason why my allergies are, I sound a little...
Well, see, also...
I sound a little nasally right now.
Nicky's mic is like this. I think this is how one is supposed to position it.
Excuse me, I was just speaking.
If you have a mic holder...
I was just speaking. I think the reason I sound a little nasally right now is my allergies were kicking up today, and usually when it's hotter, it makes sort of the allergens or get released from their nature source a little bit. How do you say? I don't know how to say it.
Oh, come on!
More.
What are you trying to say here?
It's
oh my God! Please.
How do you say?
Nicky, come on!
It's increased more. The pollen count is increased more when it gets hotter. I guess that's what I'd like to say.
Yes. Okay. Oh, and you think this is interesting? And this is interesting conversation.
We're in the middle of grasses pollen right now, and we're going to get into ragweed soon enough in September, and
that won't be good for Nicky.
Well, no, grasses is not good for me. Ragweed's not good for me. Tree pollen like birch is really not good for me. Oh. But the worst of them all is dust mites for me.
Okay, I actually personally I'm allergic to a certain type of grass. I forget what kind, but I don't think I'm that allergic to it. Although, however, the summer when we moved to New York, I got allergies like I never had in my life. I was walking to Trader Joe's, and it was a bit of a walk to Trader Joe's, and I would be sneezing all along the way. I couldn't stop sneezing. I had a tissue packet. I used all the tissues in there. Every block, I would have to stop in a bodega to ask for some napkins or something because I kept sneezing. It was crazy. It was crazy.
There's these tissues that we get from Whole Foods, and they're like, very, nature friendly.
No, they're not. Are they?
Yeah,
they're just regular.
They're recyclable made from recyclable materials.
Well, it's not like nature friendly.
Well, what I'm trying to say is,
a lot of people do recycle.
When I use that to blow my nose, it kind of makes me start coughing. They're sort of
there's a harsh. Well, it's not about the harshness of it. It's just there's a lot of lint on it.
Right. So it made
I don't like it. It makes me cough.
It made me start looking up lintless tissues or tissues for your nose, facial
To blow my
tissues.
nose, to
and
blow my
I
nose.
I got them off the Amazon.
It's a DJ Real song.
Lintless tissue. Costs a little bit extra, but it's worth it. You only have to use one, and you're good.
Yeah. Anyway, what Nicky said there.
Anyway, what else is going on?
Okay, this is a big announcement here. We'll be continuing to talk about it as the weeks go by before the event, but our live show, Vintage Basement with Max and Nicky, it was our monthly comedy show in New York City that we had going before the pandemic, and we are going to be coming back on September 20th.
With the first live in-person show since the quarantine started. We've been live streaming it throughout the quarantine every month. In the beginning of the quarantine, we were doing it on a weekly basis. But now it's time for us to bring it back to an in-person setting. That's going to happen on September 20th, Monday, September 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern.
In New York City, at Manhattan, at the Crane Theater.
Usually our usual location is the Under St. Mark's Theater in the East Village, but unfortunately there was a fire there a few days ago.
It was a fire a few stories above,
but it caused,
in the same building, but it caused water damage in the theater itself, unfortunately. So they are going through
repairs and restoration
on that. And that will be back hopefully by October, most definitely probably by November.
But it's too bad because that's where we feel most at home for the Vintage Basement show.
Right.
But, the Crane Theater is
their home away from home.
And that's going to be a good show, too. We got a good lineup brewing for that. So we'll let you guys know when tickets go on sale for that.
That's right.
Another event that's going to happen on Wednesday, October 6th at 7:30 p.m. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but we'll announce it right now, I guess. Max and I are going to be doing a solo two-man show.
Well, it would be a duo.
A duo, but it's like a solo act show, Mm-hmm. And that's going to be called...
Well, actually, if you consider the act, because there will be different acts of the show...
No. Don't confuse the audience. We are the only act on the show.
What he means is that we are the only people.
We're the only performers on the act.
Most likely. There might be one other.
No, probably
maybe.
Not. Oh, maybe playing the piano.
Well, definitely there might be somebody playing the piano.
Because we're going to... So here's the idea is it's going to be called Max and Nicky, a vintage variety show. And it's going to be
sort of a 60s style variety show.
We're going to be
and we've done them in the past.
We're going to be doing some stand-up bits. We're going to be doing our hearttrock songs, some
sketches,
choreography, and dances from the respective musicals that we wrote.
What do you
mean?
Dances? No, maybe just one dance.
No, probably two dances.
Two dances?
Yeah, the Whistler's tune, and I was thinking, I'm telling you, you need to change. Don't limit yourself. Quit.
Oh, maybe, but then it wouldn't be from both of our musicals. It would just be from one of our musicals.
Well, because the dances from my musical, which was called Made in China, they were usually bigger. They're usually required more people than just two. I mean, the ensemble was involved in like almost every single choreographed piece in that play.
All right. Well, musical. When those come around to being performed again, those musicals, we will certainly let you all know.
But in the meantime, definitely we will let you know when these tickets go on sale for our Max and Nicky two-man show, Max and Nicky, a vintage variety show.
It will be at Union Hall in Brooklyn, New York, which is...
Wednesday, October 6th.
In Park Slope.
7:30 p.m. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, with that all said, let's get down...
Well, I just want to say one thing. This has been on my mind. I've been watching Shark Tank recently, like a lot of clips of Shark Tank. And I got to say, why would anybody ever want to make a deal with Mr. Wonderful? What's his name? Kevin O. something or another. He seems like the sort of quintessential sort of businessman, like Trump type businessman that you wouldn't want to go into business with, you know? In fact, I think he was a Trump supporter. He's Canadian, but I think he supported Trump. And I'm like, if I were ever on that show, I'd be like, I don't know if I could trust
I don't trust you.
I don't trust you, you know?
He seems like a real shark.
He seems like a real shark. There's other nicer sharks, as it were, on that show.
I mean, a shark, yeah. Well, I mean, he seems also to be, I don't know. I don't watch the show.
But even if he was a good businessman, I would feel sort of morally at odds with going into business with somebody whose beliefs are not the same. I mean, whose maybe political beliefs are not the same. Anyway, I wonder if other people think that when they go on Shark Tank. Like, do they ever think, say all the other sharks passed, but Kevin, Mr. Wonderful, offered them a deal? Would they turn it down because they don't want to work with him specifically? I don't know. I think about these things. Do other people think about these things? Comment and let me know.
Well, sometimes people get turned down and then it becomes successful anyway. Part of the reason being on the show is not just to make a deal with those people, but to get exposure, actually. And also, Diamond Dallas Page, who was a wrestler who already had a fan base, he went on the show apparently to promote his yoga. Diamond Dallas Page's yoga, I forgot what it's called. Nobody bought the idea. It now is an extremely successful, I think, YouTube channel, and a lot of people subscribe to it, and I think it's a big success.
Well, okay, you know what was an item or a product that premiered on that show that actually just gave it a lot of exposure right away was the Squatty Potty. And
really, did anyone buy it?
I don't know if anybody bought it, but I saw them talking about past products that they featured on the show, and it was like a Variety magazine thing, or Vanity Fair thing, and they were talking about how all of them thought it was so ridiculous, such a ridiculous idea for something, and then one of the sharks said, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I went into my husband's bathroom, and she's kind of suggesting the idea that her and her husband have different bathrooms, which I think is a great idea. But she said, I accidentally went to my husband's bathroom, and lo and behold, he had a Squatty Potty in there. And she's like, oh my God.
What do you mean I accidentally went into my husband's bathroom? That's kind of a weird
It's a weird thing to say. I don't know what she meant by that, but that's what she said. But it goes to show you, even the most ridiculous ideas can be very successful. Now, does a Squatty Potty really actually help? I don't know about that. I had one and I used it for a bit, and gotta say I don't think it really helped much. But hey,
but it might help some people, and I don't know. I was trying to research this myself, and I don't know. I think the jury's out on this one. I think some doctors, gastroenterologists, I think they say that it could help, but they're not giving it for sure
a hard and fast approval.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, just like everyone else, people's bodies are different from one another, and it's just like all medications don't work the same way for everybody, and all foods don't work the same way for everybody, and everyone has different allergies, and I think people like to generalize people in different ways, and that not just for how
I'm generalizing. I'm generalizing this Kevin O something from Shark Tank, from Card Sharks, and who knows? He might be a really nice guy. Although the way he carries himself on the show, he does seem very pompous, and
Well, he has this sort of classic style businessman type of attitude, and he probably comes from that world. And I think, well, who knows? Maybe business. I mean, I don't know. We watched that show. What is it called again?
Press Your Luck.
No. The HBO show.
Jeopardy.
No, HBO show. It's about the family business, a succession.
New season coming out this fall. Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a very good show. It's very dark.
The acting is superb on that show.
Oh, and also it's very funny on, what's those two guys that are really funny in that show?
Oh, yeah. Matthew McFadden and Nicholas something. I can't remember his last name. Those guys are really funny.
Right. Their interactions
in
are
very
really funny.
subtle, kind of nuanced ways, Especially that Matthew McFadden. He's
not just funny, but he's a really good dramatic actor.
Oh, man.
Too.
There's some really... there's some moments of gravitas in that show that almost make you want to tear up, even though they're like about these kind of horrible people. It's interesting.
Right. Yeah. It's quite interesting.
But that Jeremy Strong is so good. I mean,
he really
God,
is. But I was listening to an interview with Culkin, Kieran Culkin.
Kieran Culkin.
Kieran Culkin. And he was talking about how he, sometimes, what's his name again? The other guy? The main character? Jeremy Strong. Jeremy Strong.
Yeah, that's the actor's name.
Yeah, he can. I guess he's more of a method actor, and so sometimes he gets in these kind of headspaces where to get into character. And
Kieran Culkin's been acting since he was a kid.
Yeah, and so it's more of a second nature thing to him, I guess. And so he tries to add some more levity to the workplace and tries to get Jeremy Strong to just lighten up sometimes. Not that he wasn't bashing him or anything. He thinks he's really great, but I think he just can get into these. Apparently, I think this is what he said on now we're talking about another interview on another podcast.
With Kieran Culkin on WTF, the Mark Maron.
I mean, what are we promoting WTF now? I mean,
I know, right?
Hey, but I listen to it. I listen to it from time to time.
I do listen. I'm listening, as Fraser Crane would say.
Anyway, let's get down to brass tacks. What did we come here to talk about today, Nicky? Traveling. I'm a traveling man, made a lot of stops all over the world. Or all over this world?
I don't know.
All over this world.
Ricky Nelson.
Actually, apparently that song, I think, was supposed to be given to Sam Cooke at first, but he turned it down and they gave it to Ricky Nelson.
Ricky Nelson was a very, very big rockabilly musician.
Rockabilly?
That's how people might describe his music, yeah.
I would not consider it rockabilly. No way.
Look it up.
I think you're incorrect about this, actually. He was more, I would call his stuff just straight up pop music from the time, actually.
Anyway, he was one of the biggest musicians of the late 50s, early 60s. In fact, I think he was the number 2 selling artist at the time, right next to Elvis Presley.
I mean, look, they consider him to be, this is according to Wikipedia, pop pioneer.
No, scroll to the right. Rockabilly,
genre.
There you go. Rockabilly, rock and roll, pop, country. Rockabilly is the first genre they list there.
Yeah, but I don't...
Trust me, he's known for, like, Fools Rush In, the song that Ricky Nelson does, that's kind of a rockabilly song,
It kind of has a rockabilly thing, but listen to Poor Little Fool. That's straight up just a pop song.
Anyway.
And also, Traveling Man, that kind of is more of a
Ricky Nelson
has more of a kind of a twang to it, too.
Was initially famous from the show Ozzie and Harriet. He was one of the sons of Ozzie and Harriet.
One of the sons of Ozzie Nelson and Harriet Nelson.
Yes, there you go. Anyway, traveling. We just went on another tangent. Why? Because on Splitting Hairs, tangents are formed.
Or, as I like to say, tangents are made. Okay, enough with the tangents. Let's get down to brass tacks.
A lot of this is going to be us talking about various stories of our traveling past, but
also our opinions on traveling.
That I was going to say a lot of it's going to be stories, but to start off with, let's talk about what we think about traveling.
All right, Nicky, what do you like traveling?
I hate traveling. But
you hate traveling? You just straight up hate it. That's a strong word.
Well,
that's a bold choice for a word.
I don't hate traveling. Okay, let me take that back. Here are the aspects I really don't like about traveling. I don't like not staying in my own bed, I always feel uncomfortable. Even in a hotel, like a nice hotel or something, there's something I just don't feel comfortable about not being in my own bed. That it's a stranger washed these sheets. Other strangers have stayed in this bed. It's just
There's
sort
possibilities of
bed bugs. It's just
bugs.
icky, you know. I don't like that. Even like just walking around in the room that I'm staying in, I can't walk around with my feet or you know. It's just you got. I mean, look, chalk it up to me being a bit of a germaphobe, I guess, but that is just the way I feel, and I feel a little uncomfortable about it. Also, traveling.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it, and there's just I hate having to pack and just make a checklist of all the things I need to pack.
Well,
I guess one could consider
you have to
myself.
pack, and then it depends on how you do your thing when you're in a hotel or a hostel. But you gotta, if you're in a hostel, back in the day, we used to do the hostels and traveling. You'd have to like pack away all your stuff that you can't just unload all your stuff and just like have it there, you know, in the bathroom, for instance, just easy accessibility, you know, your toothbrush and things like that. You got to pack it back away into your bag or whatever. And it's all just very complicated.
It is. And so I hate packing, and then, you know, I'm a bit of a high maintenance guy. But it's not just that. I just want to make sure I never forget anything that I need or that I might need when I go traveling. You know, I mean, even traveling to Los Angeles, which is where we're from, I'm going home. We're going to Los Angeles in the beginning of September. Let me just say,
Nicky's not high maintenance in the sense that he needs some sort of luxury type of thing to stay at.
I always try to. I try to pack as lightly as possible. Or I always try to pack. I always try to pack one bag, and that's it. Usually no more than a bag. And if it's an extended trip, I'll bring my laptop too.
What he's saying is that he has specific things that he needs to do.
But it's not just that. It's
or that he has specific things that he needs to.
I'm not some guy that can just go somewhere and go with the flow. You know, I need my certain things packed away that I'm going to need. Certain toiletries and such.
See, I'm already looking at the waveforms on our little,
you got to be closer, like me.
On our DAW here,
get a little bit closer.
Digital audio workstation. Logic is what we use. Logic Pro X. If you guys are looking for a very affordable DAW to use, look no further than Logic.
Apple doesn't pay us. I wish they did, though.
Well, hey, I'm not doing this to pay. Well, maybe they want to sponsor us later. You ever think about that? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not doing it for good. But to be honest, though, Logic is a very good program. It's only, I think it's less than $300, and it constantly gets updates, and the updates are free.
It works just as well as Pro Tools, which is, I guess, the industry standard.
Well, I guess I don't
Although,
really use Pro Tools,
it's Pro Tools is becoming less of the industry standard because Logic is something that more home studios use. And in fact, Billie Eilish and her brother they produced all their stuff on Logic Pro in their house, you know?
Logic Pro X.
Logic Pro X. And so if people like... And the brother, Phineas, he won Producer of the Year at the Grammys last year.
I mean, this was from a home studio recording. Now, I don't know what their home studio is like. Maybe it's really nice. But nevertheless, that's pretty cool. I think that's neat.
Yeah, especially coming from guys who produce their own stuff in their own home. Us two, that is.
It's inspiring.
It's inspiring. Although, hey, if we could record in an expensive studio like the way Brian Wilson was able to without having to worry about expenses, that would be nice. Well, wouldn't it be nice?
They did have to worry.
Wouldn't it be nice, though?
Yeah, it would be. But
do you get what I'm saying?
Hey, don't worry, baby. Okay, I'm just kidding. That's stupid.
Whoa. Hang on to your ego.
Oh, boy. We have all these questions to ask about in life, and I know there's an answer.
We're getting into... If you're familiar with Pet Sounds, a song on Pet Sounds is called I Know There's an Answer, and... The alternate title for that song with alternate lyrics was called Hang On to Your Ego.
Which was the first set of lyrics that Brian Wilson had wanted to release the album as was "Hang On to Your Ego," but they thought for some reason that was not
Negative.
as relatable and had some sort of, it was a little too mature, I guess. So I think he was vetoed by the other band members.
And you know what? I like.
Or maybe
I
it was
know,
just Mike Love.
I like the. I like the lyrics. I know there's an answer more personally.
Really?
Yeah. Even though I would say I re-listened to the whole album recently because I was watching somebody react to it. I've been watching these reaction videos. They're kind of fun to watch.
Kind of. Sometimes it's just, some of them are.
Some of them are
just like...
Some of them are annoying that they interrupt the song like constantly, especially at climaxes. But
Well, no, sometimes they're also, it's just kind of the same thing always. It's always like, oh my God, I did not expect this, or I didn't, or it's just like, man, this is, the way they did that chorus and the way that came in, it's just all the same thing all the time. And it's
wow, his voice.
Right. It's just, also, I just think some of these songs are so famous.
It's hard to believe they never heard him before.
It is hard to believe, but maybe some people have.
Anyway,
it,
I was
it's cool that they're getting exposed to this. But
okay.
I
was watching this guy react to Pet Sounds, so I listened along with him too. And I gotta say, the song "I Just Wasn't Made for These Times," man, I relate to that so much. It's crazy how much that song speaks to me. I really feel like, in a way, we're kind of growing up in the wrong time. I mean,
well, Nicky, you may think,
or we've come of age, and not just that we're trying to build our careers at the wrong time in the wrong era.
Okay. Well, I want to say,
especially our sense of humor is very much influenced by 80s and early 90s sitcoms,
No, not just that. I would say 90s, actually.
Yeah, well, Conan O'Brien from the 90s.
I would say, actually, there's a lot of, I would say we're influenced a lot by, I would consider it to be maybe more 90s alternative humor, actually.
Well, I would say, no. I would say our sense of humor is very influenced by The Simpsons, by the first 8 seasons of The Simpsons, especially, really especially.
Yeah, Seinfeld, most certainly.
Seinfeld,
which
especially the mid to late seasons of Seinfeld, especially the late season of Seinfeld, where it got really ridiculous.
Well, no, I mean,
because that's where our stuff is really ridiculous. And then,
well, no, hold on, but I think there is a certain analytical quality to earlier seasons of Seinfeld too, that we're certainly influenced by also, I think,
But also our music is...
No, and also Frasier is a big influence on us too. That's a 90s show
I
too,
was just
primarily.
Gonna say, yeah, but, shows from the 80s as well, such as Cheers and The Cosby Show influenced me a lot,
Well,
too.
The Cosby Show certainly influenced us a lot. But I will
Not
say...
Bill Cosby himself, but The Cosby Show.
Well... Yeah,
actually, Bill Cosby in the show.
Yeah, Bill Cosby. I mean, look, I know it's a controversial thing to say, but I'm not going to deny how we were influenced in the past, and Bill Cosby did influence,
And that
things.
show, what that show did for sort of black culture was really cool. I mean, I was just watching a clip the other day. I was revisiting a clip where Claire Huxtable is singing with a gospel choir at Hillman University.
Well, no, you mean what it did for the portrayal of black people.
Right. Well, but also for black culture and getting that exposed to a broader audience. I think that was cool.
I see what you're saying. Well, that's what I'm saying. I see. Gotcha.
And gosh, I was watching this clip and I just got shivers. I mean, Felicia Rashad, such a good singer. I mean, really, really great.
Well, there's also a scene.
There's a scene that we watch all the time.
People, I understand if you feel apprehensive to want to even look anything up that includes Bill Cosby, but there are other actors that are involved in these things, and yes, it's a sad thing that that legacy is tarnished and tainted. But there's some really good quality moments. Like there's an episode.
Yeah, I mean, he exposed a lot of people in the 80s to a lot of jazz music that might have been forgotten at that point.
But no,
there's a specific episode.
There's a specific episode where they they're talking about this song Moody's Mood for Love, and he doesn't have the record of it anymore because he quote unquote played it so much
wore
that he
it
wore it out. But and they start singing it, and then Nancy Wilson, the famous Nancy Wilson singer, not the
from singer
Heart
from
fame,
Heart, not the guitarist from Heart,
but the jazz singer, and pop singer,
the jazz and pop singer Nancy
Wilson,
really
big in the '60s.
One of my favorite jazz singers of all time.
She's guest starring on it, and the two men start singing the song, and then the two women, their wives, enter, and they're the real good singers actually, and they start singing the song. And they kind of chime in, and
they all start singing together
because they don't have the record to dance to. They all start dancing to them, singing it together. And it really
that's how the episode ends.
I mean, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now.
Me too. Look it up. Just look up Moody's Mood for Love Cosby Show. If you're willing to do that, understand if you're not. But if you are, it's a really great clip. And that's the thing about the Cosby Show that was really cool too is. And again, this is kind of a big influence on us, is a lot of episodes, there would never be a conflict. There would just be no conflict on the episode. Things would just happen. It'd be like a slice of life kind of episode. And I don't know if executives or network executives would buy that kind of pitch anymore. I feel like they might need a problem to exist in a script. And I guess I can understand that, but I don't know. Maybe there's not as much of an open-mindedness. I don't know, but what do I know?
No, I mean, here's the thing. There might be... It's kind of a weird thing, the way the industry is now. I mean, you have so many platforms, and there might be an open-mindedness to it. I think Netflix actually tends to be more open-minded to things because there seems to exist on Netflix more niche kind of stuff, I think.
Sure. But I
even
will say,
on these other stations,
I will say this:
maybe
the sitcoms that influenced us back then, we relate to more. But I do feel like, and don't get me wrong, MASH is one of my favorite shows of all time, and that could maybe be considered a drama. But I will say, on a larger scale, dramas of more recent times have gotten a lot better, and so that's.
Right, Better Call Saul.
I will say that my favorite shows in the past decade tend to be dramas, not comedy shows, whereas my favorite shows of all time tend to be sitcoms from the 80s and 90s. So I don't know. So that's sort of a circuitous way of talking about how I just wasn't made for these times. But also our music is really influenced by 60s music.
But at the same time, Nicky, you were made for these times in that we're able to do this podcast right now just from my laptop.
I know, but we were talking about it before. Like, we're also the kinds of guys that we don't like wink to the audience about anything. Our act is very performative. We really present a thing to the audience, and
it has a sort of an element of theater to it.
And
that theater, we like to stay in character.
And that kind of thing is maybe more old-fashioned, I mean, that's the kind of thing you would see with duo acts in the past.
But that's not necessarily true. I mean, in the past, they did wink to the audience, maybe even more. No, not maybe more, actually, but definitely in the past, they would, there would be definitely a...
Then again,
maybe you have a point.
Then again, Stella is one of our biggest influences, too, and they are... definitely not winking to the audience.
Right, and they're more late 90s, 2000s, actually,
Sure.
And they're one of the biggest influences on us.
Definitely Conan O'Brien from the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. I mean, he was really on fire at that time. And
oh, man, look no further.
Hilarious.
There's these... Whenever Rebecca Romaine was on it, it just almost... He had like a crush on her, but that just added another element to this edge he had in comedy that was like unlike anything else you ever seen. It was so funny.
Anyway, gosh, we are going on so many tangents here.
As we say once again in Splitting Hairs, tangents are formed
or made.
Maybe we should, if this podcast ever got big enough, we should have T-shirts made where it says "Tangents are made" or "Tangents are formed."
Anyway, so I was saying, traveling, you just got all these things to worry about.
And back to traveling.
Okay. Anyway, traveling, you got all these things to worry about. I guess I'm not the kind of traveler that just goes with the swing of things and just let, fly by the seat of my own pants kind of thing. Is that the
Fly
right?
by the seat of my pants.
Fly by the seat of my pants. I have to make sure I know things. Even when I was traveling, when I studied abroad, I set an itinerary for myself like a month in advance before I even left for any trip. And I knew exactly what I was going to do every single day of traveling, what sites I was going to visit. It was a way for me to know exactly, just get things done at a good rate. And sometimes I would let things take me where I didn't know what, and hey, a lot of interesting stories happened because of that.
Well, let me tell you though, actually.
But wait,
let me just say, just because you just mentioned that, I did that kind of a thing the first time I went to Europe. I would book my hostel in advance, and I would set an itinerary for every place I was going to go to. But then I returned to the U.S. to finish college, and then I went back to Europe a year later, and that time, whenever I traveled, I actually did fly.
We
by
both
the seat
studied in France. By the way,
I did fly by the seat of my pants, and I did. I had somewhat of an idea of where I was going to go next, but I didn't book I did couch surfing, actually. I mean, that was kind of.
See, I
wouldn't ever do that ever again anymore.
Well, I mean, when we did sort of,
I feel like you got to watch out with that.
When
kind
we
of stuff,
did sort of go off,
could be predatory people.
When we did go off the beaten path and we hadn't planned things ahead of time, we got ourselves into a sort of sticky situation sometimes. When we were in Morocco, for example, we sidetracked into a little town called Chefchaouen.
I know.
I just want to say, but the place that we had stayed, because it was like one of the first places we came across when we arrived in Chefchaouen, this little town where the whole Medina is painted in blue.
But let's get
I just want to say. I
don't want you to ruin any of the story here.
I know.
Actually,
I just want to say.
We are going to talk about.
I know. I
Chefchaouen.
just want to say, when we got there, this place we stayed, it seemed fine, but then we got up to the room and I
see. This is something I don't want you to ruin quite yet.
Why? What's wrong with that?
Because I wanted to build up suspense.
Yeah, but we're talking about the problems I have with traveling,
I know,
and this is one of them.
But this is part of the story, I think, that makes it interesting. So hold on to your seats, guys, because we'll be talking about it in just a bit.
I guess, gosh, I'm looking at the time already. Jesus Christ. All right, Max, what about you? Do you like traveling or not?
I guess...
Don't get me wrong. I don't dislike traveling. I like going to different places and seeing the sights. When we went to Egypt and we saw the pyramids... I mean, that was like, wow, come on, guys. I mean, we saw the Sphinx. I mean, we went inside of one of the great pyramids of Giza. I mean, come on, forget about it.
Well, we went
That's
into
really cool.
We went into the main one. I think it's the only one that you can maybe even go into. But
anyway, Max, do you like traveling or not like traveling?
Well, here's the thing about it. The act of traveling, I don't particularly like because it's a whole. You have to pack, you have to go on a plane for a long time. You always lose sleep.
Never get enough sleep. That's a good point, Max.
You never get enough sleep. You're always kind of exhausted. It's not relaxing. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not a relaxing thing.
It's not relaxing. I know people talk about their vacations in Hawaii. I've never had a vacation like that, although there's one time I went to Marbella in Spain because apparently they had really nice beaches, golden beaches, and this golden sand I saw the pictures of. And I went there by myself and I realized, well, what do you do here? All you do is relax? That's boring, I guess,
Well, it just
I guess if I were with other people, it'd be fun.
The point Nicky's making is, why am I could be seeing, historical sites or doing something of note, and I'm just sitting around. That there's something about that. I think what he's saying, almost like it seemed like a waste of my time, But here's the thing:
traveling is never relaxing.
So it's never relaxing. and like Nicky said, I like my own bed. I like the comforts of my own home. And so you're always feeling a little bit,
You always feel, especially if you're going to a different country, you're going to be jet lagged, and it's going to take a little bit to get used to that. And yeah, I don't know, just...
Well, anyway, so is this my turn to talk, or is it your turn?
Sorry.
So, and when you're in a hostel, you're sometimes sharing the hostel with a lot of people. I remember this one time in Florence.
Well, we wouldn't go, and we wouldn't stay in a hostel anymore.
No, I know, but back in the day, we did. And I remember this time there was a lot of people, and there was this one guy who was a really nice guy, but he snored so loud. It was the loudest snore I've ever heard in my life. He woke up everybody in the hostel, because it was kind of this hostel where I think almost the whole hostel was in this one room, actually. There was like 20 people. There was a lot of beds. But he woke up everybody, and everyone was like, should we wake him up to tell him to shut up? And
well, it's funny. The first time I ever stayed in hostel, it was when I traveled. I was studying in Lyon, but I traveled to London. That was the first place I traveled to during a vacation. And the first night, I think the first night I got there, I saw Phantom of the Opera, which was a really great experience. But I got back to the hostel, went to bed, and there weren't that many people in the room. There were like 5 others, and there were like, I think 3 of them were like tall female Norwegian swimmers.
Norwegian wood.
And they might have been Swedish or some kind of Scandinavian, although they might have been Portuguese. But there was one guy below me, he was snoring so loud.
Norwegian wood. That's how it is.
He was snoring so loud, and all the female swimmers, they were kind of making fun of him, and they were saying like, oh, we got to get him to shut up. But they ended up being more annoying to me than the guy that was snoring, because they kept making so much noise. And I finally told him like, hey, can you guys keep it down? I'm trying to sleep here. It ended up being that I got used to the guy snoring, but those girls were actually being the loud type to keep me up,
Because sometimes when there's a constant going on, it becomes sort of like white noise, and so you can kind of deal with that. But when it's something that's kind of interruptive, that that obtrusive,
right?
Intrusive,
It kind of
that disturbs
you, and
that disturbs the constant.
I'll tell you, that's another thing. Traveling with other people. If you got to stay in a room with other people, even friends, there's going to be fights. I'm just telling you right now. There could be, and it's just. It's not a good idea.
People got their own way of
People got their own way of their own habits of getting ready for bed, waking up, going to sleep, and it just people can get annoyed with each other. And in fact, we just went somewhere with some friends, and one of my friends, he definitely snored every night. And I told him, "Hey, you're snoring," and he wouldn't admit that he was snoring. And I'm like, dude, what is your deal? You're snoring. Trust me. I mean, every night. It was like something he didn't want to admit. It's kind of funny, but...
Well, in any event, I do want to say on that tip that you were saying about the Norwegian thing, and this will serve as a transition into actual stories, more interesting stories, because this led to an interesting story, I tell you what.
We should note that we say all this stuff having had a lot of experience traveling. I mean, we have traveled a lot, especially when we were studying in Europe. We traveled all around Europe, and parts of North Africa, and
that's right, parts of North Africa. That's right,
and
Morocco and Egypt, yes,
and parts of for me or for both of us, parts of Asia, Western Asia. I went to Turkey,
Israel,
and Israel, but anyway, go on.
Anyway, as I was saying. Well, yeah, that is Western Asia. I was going to say that, when I was in Edinburgh, in Scotland, I did like some sightseeing for the day, and this was on December 27th, I believe that was the date. So if you guys are familiar with Edinburgh and their history, or in Scotland and their history, I think what's maybe coming to what's expected to come in this story, perhaps. But basically what happened was I was staying in this hostel and I was tired from the day and I decided to take a little bit of a nap. And as I was taking a nap, I was like sleeping for maybe, 15 to 20 minutes. And then these guys come into the hostel making a lot of noise and they see people taking naps and stuff. I just was like, these guys are so annoying. And they woke me up and I just thought, all right, well, I may as well get dinner now. It was about 6:30 p.m. And so I go outside, and my hostel was on what's called the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, which leads up to the castle. And so what happened was I go outside, I start trying to look for places to eat, and boy, am I glad these guys woke me up at that time, because I started noticing some people with these, I noticed this one kid, he had this sort of rod in his hand with his mom. And I was like, that's kind of a weird thing to have. Why does he just have this rod? He's not doing anything with it. And I thought there might have been something up with that kid for some reason. And then I started seeing more people with rods in their hands. And I thought, what the heck
rods and cones in their eyes.
Well, no, just rods in their hands. And I thought, what is going on? And then I started seeing masses of people with rods in their hands. And I asked this guy, hey, what's going on here? And he's like, you don't know this is the beginning of Hogmanay. And I was like, what's Hogmanay? Hogmanay, apparently for years and years in Scotland, it was frowned down upon to celebrate Christmas. And I'm not sure if I might be getting the story not quite right, but basically, Nicky's saying kind of speed up here, but basically they would celebrate New Year's like no other. It would be like a 3 to 4 day event. Sometimes even longer, I think, but mainly 3 days. And then but Hogmanay, it was the December 27th or 28th, and the guy said, it's the commencement of Hogmanay today. And so that was going to kick things off for the 3-day festival. And so I go up further on the Royal Mile and I see these rods, and they are actually torches because they were on fire for some of them. And I was like, whoa, wow. And then I got up even further on the Royal Mile and I saw a big mass of people with torches, and some of these guys were dressed to the nines in these sort of...
all this story, it kind of reminds me of The Wicker Man in a way, somehow.
Well, basically...
if you guys have ever seen The Wicker Man, not the Nicolas Cage one, but the original one from the 70s.
Well, yes, wicker as in the wick. That's what it's called, right? The wick, right? Yes, the wick of the thing to be lit on a torch. Some of these guys were dressed in full Scottish regalia, and it was really it was a sight to be seen. Some of them had these huge torches that were really, looked like these classic, things from a long time ago that they were wearing. And then some of them had bagpipes, and they were all, I realized at the top of the Royal Mile, it was a gathering that was about to be this big procession. And I decided I got to buy a torch, and I got one of these rods, and I got mine lit. And basically, they did this in unison. All the people with the bagpipes, they started playing that classic Scottish tune that goes... Anyway, just think. Yeah, Nicky's saying.
Well, it's just we have a lot of other stories that are kind of a lot crazier to tell. And so this is they were not a crazy story.
But just imagine they were all playing it in unison, and then we all, with our torches, started to make this procession to what's called Calton Hill, and it was just this happenstance. These guys woke me up at this time, and thank goodness they did, and I was able to experience this. We went to Calton Hill. There was this big bonfire with huge fireworks, and it was such a really neat event to happen. And it was unexpected, and that's what made it all the greater, that it was unexpected.
When I was in Edinburgh...
So Hogmanay, check it out if you're in town from the 27th or 28th to the 1st of January.
That kind of actually reminds me of the festivals that would happen in Lyon, which is where I studied, Lyon, France. There's a festival called La Fête des Lumières, which is the Festival of Lights in Lyon. And the commencement of that festival is people would light candles and go up to the famous basilica or basilique in Lyon, and they would go up to there and light candles in the basilique. But the idea of the Festival of Lights in Lyon is they'd have these big light shows against all the buildings in the whole city, and this would happen in early December, and everybody from around the world would come to this festival, except Americans didn't really know about it. But everywhere else around the world, they would come to see this festival, and that's pretty cool. I highly recommend going to Lyon. Great city. You know, if it's one of the biggest cities in France, and yet a lot of Americans don't really know about it.
It has the thriving cultural appeal of Paris without all the hustle and bustle.
Right. It's a little, as my homestay mother would say, I lived with a homestay family in Lyon. She said, Paris is great for visiting, but Lyon is better for living in.
I mean, some might
argue against that. Anyway, and hey, don't get me wrong, Paris is a great magical city too. But, anyway.
La Fête de Lumière, I visited Nicky in Lyon
during that
time, and I will say it was very fun. I had an enjoyable time there, and his friends were very fun to hang out with. Some of whom we are still friends with today.
Exactly.
Anyway,
I will say this about Edinburgh real quick. I actually went to the school that the Harry Potter school, Hogwarts, was based on. And I went to the coffee shop / hot chocolate place.
Would you say with some of whom we are friends today? With some of whom we are friends today.
I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I went to that place where J.K. Rowling wrote her first book, apparently, and I went to the school, and I actually snuck into the school, and there were all these kids with these plaid outfits on. It was really cute, but I think I kind of snuck into the school during school hours, and a couple guys saw me, and they were like being nice about it, but I think it seemed like a creepy guy kind of wandering around. I just wanted to look at it because it was a very beautiful school. And I don't even really know Harry Potter that well. I've only seen the first movie. I haven't even read the books. I think I read the first page of the first book. But
Edinburgh was a very fun town. An interesting dichotomy in that town of Gothic architecture and Georgian architecture. Or is it Georgian? I don't know.
Anyway, let's get on to some crazier stories, because that's what we're here for, right? The crazy stories.
All right, well, listen here.
There's two big stories.
So wait, hold on. I didn't get to finish what I was going to say about...
Oh, really? We're going to talk about Hogmanay?
No, I'm just not going to talk about Hogmanay. I just want to say, with all those exhaustive things I was talking about traveling, I do love being able to see these historical sites and these things that you just...
They're so much older than things in America.
Well, and it's not just old stuff. It's just things out there in the world that are outside of your normal everyday life, and people really should make an effort, if they can and can afford it, to go seek that stuff out in the world, because there are so many different cultures out in the world that live differently than you, and you should check out their histories, because...
Right. We're going to get to that with Morocco, because that's like... That was the biggest culture shock we experienced.
It gives you a better sense of just how diverse the world can be.
Now, here's a story that happened kind of due to me flying by the seat of my pants. I was going to Venice, Italy, during Carnival time.
We were staying with our friend Heather in Padova, which is just outside of Venice.
Even though Max studied in Paris, I studied in Lyon, we usually traveled separately alone. But on this occasion, and a couple other occasions, we actually met up in
Venice, because we wanted to be there at the same time because
it was Carnival. And we were staying with our friend Heather in Padova, Italy.
Or Padua, if you...
Which is, what, like 50 to 100 miles outside?
No, it's like 30 miles, I think, outside of Venice.
30 miles outside of Venice.
Something like that.
So Max had gone to Venice earlier on in the day than I. And
no, I got there a day earlier, actually.
Oh, you had actually stayed there the night?
I stayed there one night, and I went and saw it. Padova is an interesting little town.
But
known for the I think they're the frescoes. Is that what it's called?
Of
Giotto.
Giotto, yeah.
Who was the one of the pioneers of proto-Renaissance art.
Okay, but we don't really need to get into that. But what I'm trying to say is, so a couple of other friends from UC Berkeley that's where we studied during college. And a couple other friends were staying with Heather too, because it was Carnival, it was a big celebration. And so Max had gone there a day earlier. So when I got there, he was already exploring in Venice by himself. And I thought, when I got to Heather's house, I was like, oh, where's Max? And she's like, oh, he went to Venice. And I was like, oh, you guys going to go today too? And they're like, no, not today. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to go. And so I got there, and I realized on my phone at the time, this was early 2009, smartphones weren't really a thing at the time, or not everybody had them. So I had a prepaid plan on my flip phone.
No, I mean, most people, I don't even... Yeah,
I knew one guy that had a smartphone.
Right.
Anyway, I got to Venice, and I was trying to meet up with Max, and I called him and I said, hey, I just want to let you know I barely have any minutes left on my phone here. Let me know where you are.
By the way, until recently, I didn't have a smartphone, actually.
Tell me where you are, and we'll meet up. And as soon as he was about to tell me, I ran out of minutes, and it hung up, and I was like, great, I can't find him. I was like, well, hopefully he text messages me, because I get free text messages, but he never did text message me.
I know, I was stupid. I don't know what I was thinking.
Anyway,
I think I was just kind of interested in the sites that were going on.
I think he had told me where he had been, and I was like, well, maybe he's still there, and I tried going there, and he wasn't there. So for a while, I was trying to search for Max, and I couldn't find him. But eventually...
I think I might have also been occupied by thinking if I was going to ask this girl out that I had seen or something like that.
Anyway, eventually I was
something like that. I was like kind of being timid about it, and I was like,
okay,
ask this person
all right. Well, anyway, eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to explore this city by myself, and I did for a bit, but I realized at a certain point that, I got to catch the train going back to Padova, because there was only one more train gonna be arriving.
Unfortunately, that year in particular.
No, let's not get to it.
All right, let's go.
And so I was like, well, too bad I couldn't meet up with Max, but oh well. And so I started making my way back to the train station, only to realize I couldn't find my way back to the train station. If you've ever been to Venice, Italy, it is a maze.
If you've ever been to Venice,
it's a maze of a city.
It is it's a maze. And you'll get lost.
You'll get lost.
You'll just get lost.
You'll get lost. And so on my way to the train station trying to find my way, I ran into a British family.
No, I thought they were Australian.
No, definitely British. What, are you kidding? Oh, you got the story wrong, man.
That's not a big stretch of a thing to think that they're Australian.
And they had thick accents, and they were trying to find the train station too, and they were lost. And so together with the British family, we were trying to find, me and the British family, we were trying to find the train station. And I got to talking with them, told them my predicament, how I couldn't ever meet up with Max that night. And they were like, the father was like, well, why don't you just use my phone? And I was like, oh, I don't want to waste your minutes or anything. He's like, mate, it's called life. And I was like, oh man, that's really nice. So I called Max. It rang a couple times, and it rang some more. And then eventually, his voicemail picked up. He didn't even pick up the phone.
I don't know what happened.
He didn't pick up the phone. I left a message. I said, Max, call me. I'm trying to meet up with you. Call me at this phone number. I'm borrowing somebody's phone. Anyway, I hung up, and I was like, well, he didn't pick up. But a few minutes later, lo and behold, that phone gets a ring, and it is Max. He calls back, and I talk to him. I'm like, oh my God, Max, where are you? And he's like, I'm at this bridge. I can't remember what it's called, but do you want to meet me there? I was like, okay, I'll meet you at this bridge. And I told the British family, thank you so much. I hope you find your way to the train station. And I said, thank you so much for the phone. And I parted ways with them. Eventually, I met up with Max at the bridge.
Which took a while, because that bridge, I mean, it's hard to find anything in
Took a while.
Venice.
By the time I had met up with Max, we realized we really better get to the train station So I didn't even get to spend time with Max that first night in Venice, really.
Because here's the deal.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Anyway, finally, we got to the train station, and we're like, oh, my God. Say.
I was going to say, in particular, for some reason this year, the Carnival usually would have all-night trains, but for some reason this year, they decided that they were going to not do that.
Weird thing. And that there would be a last train of the night. It's as if it were the Bay Area with the BART system, where the BART doesn't run all night
on New Year's.
It's on any night, but on New Year's of all days, it stops at 2 a.m. or something like that. Maybe even earlier.
The last train for Carnival of Venice, it was like at 11:30 or something.
It was at 11:30, and we were like, "Oh man, we better get there." Anyway, we got there. We had like just a couple minutes left. 2 minutes. I told Max, "Okay, you buy the tickets, and I'll go down into the
tell the conductor to hold the train for us."
Tell the whole conductor to hold the train for us. Max got the tickets. We went down to the actual train platform, and 11:30 passed.
And we're like, I guess we didn't miss it.
11:30, and then we're like, oh man, I guess we missed it. And then,
or we thought, maybe it just hasn't come yet.
But then a few minutes passed more, and
a few more minutes passed,
and the train.
And then
then we ran into there were some other people waiting there for the train.
Yes,
and there was like. I think there were like 3.
Okay, it doesn't matter. There was
It does matter how many people there were. It was
there were 6 of them. It was 6. Trust me.
Were 8. It was 8 of them.
No,
it was 8 of them.
Oh, it was 8 of them. It was 8 of them.
There were, I believe, like
it doesn't matter.
I believe there were 5 Spanish.
It doesn't matter.
Spaniards and 3 Indian guys.
Oh my God, that doesn't matter.
Anyway, we talked to them, and they told us we've been waiting here for a long time. The train never came. And so we're like, well, what, are we stuck in Venice for the night? And we're like, there's got to be a way.
We go with these 8 people, and we realize there's a bus depot, and we all go there to maybe, hitch grab the bus.
They were going to a town
maybe 8
miles away from Padova.
And so
we're all going to essentially the same place.
Right. So we're all going to the same, maybe around the same place. So we thought, all right, well, let's go maybe take the same bus together. And we go to the bus depot only to find that there were no buses that were going
directly to
Padova. There was one bus that was going maybe 8 miles outside of Padova.
And it was a packed bus, by the way. And I had one foot in the door, and the
bus driver was waiting
for us. And
he wasn't just waiting for us. He was waiting to leave.
And he was like, "Are you guys going to get on or not?" And we're
just like, 8 miles.
8 miles.
What are we going to do?
That's
a far away.
And we're like, we didn't think at the time
we could have just gotten a cab from there or something like that.
Anyway, we decided not to get on the bus. Stupid of us.
Well, but neither did the 8 other people
that we were teamed up with, I guess you could say. Anyway, at that point, we were all like, well, what do we do now?
And we just thought, what if we split
a cab?
The cost of a cab? It wouldn't be
2 cabs.
Yeah, 2 cabs. It wouldn't be that much. So right next to this bus depot where all the cabs were, and we
went up to the cab drivers, and we're like, oh, can you take us to so-and-so? And they're like, yeah. And the cab driver we're like, how much would it be? And he gave us an amount, and we're like, okay, we could do that. And he said, oh, there's 10 of you. We can only have 4. Each cab, only 4 people per car.
Maximum per car.
And so there were 8 of them and only 2 of us. And so we said, well, you guys, there's 8 of you.
And
you guys are together. We don't want to split you up. Why don't you go out without him? And they were like, okay, bye. They had no qualms about it. They didn't feel bad.
They didn't even bother to say,
anyway,
are you guys going to be okay?
They got in their cabs and went on their merry way.
And Nicky and I just thought, great.
We're truly stuck in Venice for the night.
And, I mean, look, there are worse places to be stuck in for the night.
But
I was tired
because we were traveling.
Actually,
at one point in my stay during Venice, I got sick because I was so tired all the time. Only to be sick for just 24 hours, really.
Anyway,
after that whole cab situation,
we just start trying to brainstorm ideas, and I mentioned to Nicky, I said, well, what if we hitchhiked? And Nicky's
And I was like,
what are you,
I was like,
crazy?
what are you, crazy? That's dangerous.
And I was like, yeah, I'm just kind of kidding. Even though I kind of really wasn't kidding. I kind of was thinking, well, maybe we should try that.
But then a few minutes later, I was like, well, what if we do hitchhike, huh? What if we do try that?
And so we decided we decided to look for some people that we could judge to be good people that had cars that were leaving near that bus depot.
The first car we see, it was like a red, sedan, I guess you could say.
And we saw these two guys giving hugs to what looked like these backpackers that were travelers, this woman and man, and we just thought...
And we thought, well, they must be nice. They're hugging people.
They're hugging people. They seem nice. Mm-hmm. And we just thought, let's ask them.
Let's ask these huggers. They're hugging people. And so we go up to the guy in the passenger seat.
Yeah, we go up to the guy in the passenger
seat. And we're like, hey, where are you headed?
Where are you headed?
And he's like, no parlo inglese, or whatever. However you speak Italian.
Right.
We speak French.
And
then he said, talk to the driver. He knew how to say.
He said, him, or something like that. So we told the driver
and we said, where are you headed? And he's like, no comprendo.
No, he didn't say no comprendo. He said, I don't understand.
And we said, where are you going?
Where are you going? Headed, where you headed is a very colloquial thing.
And we said, where are you going?
And he said,
Padova.
And we said, oh my God, Padova. And we said,
like,
we said, can we get a ride with you? And he said, I don't understand. And we said,
can we go with you to Padova?
He's like, oh yeah, sure.
First guy we asked.
And
going to the same city that we're going.
And he said, just get in and I'll take you. And
yes, so sure. On the way to Padova, the conversation was a little awkward, I guess, because it wasn't too awkward.
No, he was a very nice guy.
He was a very nice guy, but there was definitely a language barrier there.
And then he was saying, where does your friend live that you're staying with? And we said,
there was a store that she lived nearby. I can't remember what it is.
We can't remember the name of the store, but it was a kind of a big... I think it was like an electronics store there was only one in town. Let's just call it Fnac, even though that's a French store, a French chain. But let's just call it Fnac for the sake of the story.
I think it was a store called Lidl or something.
Yeah, that's right. It did have an L in it. But Lidl, that kind of sounds German.
No. There was a Lidl in France too. That I think that was a chain throughout Europe.
Okay. Well, anyway, so
for the purpose of this, let's call it Lidl.
Okay, no, Lidl. So we said, she lives near this place called Lidl. And he's like, I live just right near there.
And we're like, no way.
And then
as we're coming off the highway, he says, the Lidl is right there. Your friend lives right there. I live
just on the
other side of the highway.
Yeah.
Other side of the highway.
Not more than a mile away. Much less than a mile.
Less than a mile away. Definitely less than a mile away. This guy probably lived maybe a half mile away from...
Even less than that.
He lived right on the other side of the highway from our friend. First guy we asked to hitchhike. And
he drops us off at the door and we say, can we give you anything for giving sorry? He's like, no, I was headed here I was going here anyway. And we thought, my God, thank you.
We ended up not having to pay for anything, not having to be in an overcrowded, uncomfortable bus.
Not having to take the train. And we got home quicker than any of those things, transportation methods would have gotten us.
And we got in there, told Heather and the friends the story, and they were laughing.
They were
because
excited.
we just had an adrenaline rush.
We had this adrenaline rush, and we just were so excited to tell them this story of what happened. And that was a unique, fun experience.
Sure.
And you know what? I think hitchhiking is not considered that bad in Europe. I remember my host mother in France. I had an early flight to Morocco, which we'll talk about next.
Well, actually, hitchhiking, I actually hitchhiked a couple times in France. One time seemed a little sketchy, actually, but I did it anyway because an old man was getting into the car too, and I was like, well, this old man is doing it. But actually, I started doing it on my own a couple times just because it was easier to get to the center of the city that way.
Right. Anyway, my host mother, I had an early flight before any of the subways were running, and she said, just take you could take the bus, over here. And he's like, but if you see anyone along the way, in their car, just ask them for a ride. And I was like, really? And I was like, isn't that dangerous? She said, No, it's okay.
No, it's kind of a regular thing, I think.
I think in Europe it's not considered as. I mean, it could be dangerous for sure, but I think their mentality is maybe people do it more often there. I don't know.
But anyway, so we'll get to Morocco in a second. I just want to say, not all traveling stories for me ended up in a positive way and a happy ending. I mean, there were some really harsh things I had to go through, some dangerous things I went through. I mean, there's a whole story where I was very unlucky. My train broke down from Naples, Italy to Bari, Italy, because I was catching a ferry to Dubrovnik, Croatia. Anyway, it's a long story, but I ended up missing the ferry. I had to share a cab with 3 Italian doctors whose breath smelled so bad.
All right. Anyway,
and then when I got to Dubrovnik, I had a lot more bad luck. I got caught in a thunderstorm and where it was just crazy. Anyway, it's a crazy story. I won't get into that one right now.
I just want another kind of happenstance that ended positive was. I won't talk about this because it doesn't really matter. But I will talk about this. This is a very small story. Is when I went to Dublin, I had printed out the directions to my hostel on. I printed them out from the computer, and again, is
this a long story?
No, it's very short. And I get out. I get out of this bus from the plane from the airport. I took the bus into town, and I get out, and I realize I lost my paper that I printed out my hostel information on, and I couldn't figure out what to do. I was like, I'm lost. I don't know where to go. I don't even remember the address at all. I don't know how to find this place.
It's before smartphones, by the way.
And I guess I could have maybe found an internet cafe,
especially
or something like
because
that.
Dublin, they speak English, so I don't know. It'd be easy to look it up actually if you think about it.
Well, I suppose so, but in my mentality at the time, again, I was tired because I was traveling.
Are you kidding?
Hold on.
That's not like the way.
I'm not.
By
finished.
the way, I just want to say this is going on longer than my Croatia story. No, it is. I really got lost there.
I'm not. You're not letting me finish the story.
Go on.
So I'm walking around for a while, not even knowing where I'm going, and I'm just thinking, can I just try and find a hostel by walking around? I walk around. It's really windy, by the way, and it's kind of drizzling.
See, this is very
okay, but I need to give you an example. It set the tone here.
No, I'm just saying, like, I could have really got into this other story that I was telling.
Let me just say,
and that's like, it's like unfair that you're telling this story when my story was really crazy.
Okay, let me just say though.
But I won't tell that.
Let me just say, it's really windy, and I decided to turn the corner at this one place.
And you're speaking English in the city. I was in Croatia. You don't speak English there.
Let me finish the story. I turn back, retrace my steps. All of a sudden, on the ground appears this paper. I pick it up. It's the directions to my hostel. I found the paper again. How is that possible? Explain. It's really windy. It found me. My paper found me.
Well, that's not as crazy as your cell phone story that dropped.
Oh, we can get into that.
We won't
later.
get into that because
maybe traveling could be part 2.
Yeah, but it's really getting late here, actually.
All right. Well, let me just say, I almost lost my cellular phone once. I was gonna stay with a friend in the south of France, in this place called Saint-Tropez, and I didn't know how to contact him otherwise. And plus, it was a phone I had for a long time. I had all my contacts in there. I was bike riding in this place called Poquerolles. It was in Les Îles d'Hyères. It was on one of the islands in Les Îles d'Hyères, in the south of France. Very beautiful. No cars on this island. You take a bike out for the day. There's a bunch of beaches you can visit. Okay, really fun. Anyway, I'm bike riding around. I had all my stuff in this plastic bag that I'd been carrying around for the day. At one point, I noticed there's a hole in my plastic bag, and I was like, I had my wallet, I had my camera, and my phone. My wallet and camera are still in the bag, but my phone isn't. I thought, oh, crap. And I turn around, retrace my steps, about 50 yards back. My phone is still laying there. Thank God I looked at that moment.
That's not as crazy of a story as I thought it was.
Oh, what? I didn't know.
Anyway,
that was real paradise. That was fun. Now, that was a real fun trip. Poquerolles.
Oh, hey, when I...
Also on Les Îles d'Hyères, I should say, I also visited...
Max.
No, but this is really quick.
No, it's not. It's not quick.
It is very quick. I'm just going to say my dad recommended I visit this place because he thought it'll be a real experience. And on that same group of islands, there's this place called L'Île Dulavon, which is a naturist island, means it's a nudist island. And I went there.
A nudist island. I don't know if you heard Max say that because that was he kind of swallowed his words there, but
And I ended up going there, and that was a real weird experience. I remember talking to a guy on that island who had also been a tourist, and there's a naturist community that lives there. And I was talking to a guy who'd also been a tourist, and we were both trying to find this big beach there to go swimming, and we both were uncomfortable talking to each other. We were both nude, and it was kind of a weird situation. It was a funny situation, but it was weird, you know. Anyway, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought, I guess, you know. I don't know.
Well, did you want to talk about Morocco?
Yes, I do. There's lots of stories though that can be very positive.
There's lots of stories that are positive, some that are negative. You know, that you just gotta cut your losses. Is that the expression, right? Cut your losses.
Morocco.
So you just gotta cut your losses.
Now we went to Morocco, and this will be the last thing we talk about before we end the podcast. I just want to start off by saying going to Morocco, especially some of the cities, is really like being thrown into a movie. Like what you would see in the movies as how crazy it can be in Morocco, cities like Fez and Chefchaouen were like that, especially Fez.
Well, Fez, the city center, the old part of the town, because the outskirts of Fez are a little bit more modern.
Now, we have a lot of stories.
The city center was very much what you think of a classic, you know, what you'd see in the movies. These narrow roads that you'd have to move out of the way of somebody towing supplies on a camel.
No,
or
not
on a mule.
On a mule, not a camel.
On a mule, and somebody's towing supplies on a mule, and
meanwhile you're standing underneath.
You're standing underneath
a camel's head
being sold at the meat market.
And guess what? That happened to us. Max was standing underneath a camel's head, and we pointed out to him, and we're like, "Oh my God!" And we got back to that same spot later in the day, and that camel's head was gone.
It was gone.
Somebody had bought it.
Somebody bought it.
But
Fez is known for a tannery, a leather tannery, by the way.
We'll get to that. Now, Morocco is really crazy. When we first got there, we actually traveled there with a friend, or we didn't travel with him there.
We all actually traveled separately
but we
Morocco.
met up together
in
Tangier, which was not like Morocco that you see in the movies at all.
It almost seemed post-apocalyptic in a way at times.
Seemed to be. Our dad had highly recommended Tangier, but
I think Tangier was a hot spot for celebrities and the life back in the 60s.
But the city, drastically changed, and it was, I think, heavily industrialized since the time our dad had been there. But
it had kind of a sparseness about the buildings too.
Anyway, so we're like, oh man, hopefully all of Morocco isn't like this.
It wasn't heavily industrialized. There were some old structures too.
So the next city we went to, my friend who had stayed with in Madrid had recommended, because I went from Lyon to Madrid to
all right, that doesn't matter.
No, but he had told me, no, it does, because I told him, after Tangier, we're planning on going to Rabat. And he's like, I recommend you guys take a side trip to Chefchaouen instead of going to Rabat. Because,
the friend in Madrid.
Yeah, in Madrid, because he's like, I went to both, and Rabat is pretty similar to either Fez or Marrakesh. I don't know exactly. He's like, you really want to go to Chefchaouen because that's a truly unique situation. And I thought, all right, I'm going to tell my brother and friend when we get there.
Right. So when we met up in Tangier, we changed our plans and decided to go to Chefchaouen at the last minute, which is important for the story that it's at the last minute, because, as I didn't want to ruin before, Nicky, we did have to find a place to stay at when we were in town when we arrived there.
The way we got to the town was a story in and of itself. We had that town is not a major city, and so it's a little hard to get to.
Oh, I should say, if you're traveling in Europe, it might be a good idea to rent a car, actually. That's what our dad did back in the day. And
hold on. Time out. What are you talking about? No.
What?
Oh, I guess depending on... I would recommend, instead of taking trains in Europe, take airplanes. There's economy flights that are so cheap. I just want to recommend this to people. EasyJet and Ryanair. I saw a flight from France, Marseille, France, to, I guess it was Tangier, Morocco. It was €0 plus tax, so it ended up being €5.
You end up paying the fees, but
€5. That's it.
That's not the point I'm trying to make. Is like you said, there's no major airport in Chefchaouen. It's a small town. It might be a good idea to rent a car if you're, that's what our dad did to travel around Europe back in the day.
But no, why are you saying Europe? Because Morocco is in Africa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's where I got confused. I was like,
gotcha.
Well, why are you mentioning that?
Yeah,
Europe?
no,
I don't know.
Because the reason I mentioned Europe is because he was in Europe and that's how he traveled. But you could probably just go from Spain to Morocco. I mean,
anyway,
or yeah,
I guess is there a land connecting the two?
Yeah, I believe so.
Anyway, so we're in Tangier, and we're like, well, we got to take. How do we get to Chefchaouen? I guess we looked it up when we had to take a bus there, and we get to the bus depot, and everything is so. You got to haggle for everything in Morocco, or else you're going to get really ripped off. And so when we got
there isn't. It is not. There is.
So you probably
water
take a ferry.
In between. You probably take a ferry or something.
But
Tangier is right at the edge.
When we got to the bus depot at Tangier, even when we were buying the bus tickets, we're like, oh, we need a ticket to Chefchaouen. Even buying a ticket at the bus depot seemed like you had to haggle for that.
Right.
And
that was a weird.
It was a weird situation. We're like, oh, can we get tickets to Chefchaouen? And it was just weird. I don't.
We weren't even
there were like
sure.
different people selling tickets.
Right. We
there.
weren't even totally sure we were getting the right tickets, or if it was a scam at all, or something
exactly.
like that.
Anyway, we ended up getting these
the tickets,
and we waited around for a while. We finally got on this bus where
it was like not even wasn't it more of like a van, like a big van or something like that?
The guy took our bags and packed them in the back of this bus. It was gross and dirty. Anyway, we got on this bus, and we're the only foreigners on there. I mean, it was all Moroccans on there.
It was a kind of a thing where people are just.
As we would
ride along our route
to Chefchaouen, this is through mountainous farm areas.
Right,
and stuff.
People would be kind of just getting off, doing their business, and the bus wouldn't even come to a complete stop. It would kind of slow down, and people would just kind of jump off.
People would jump off or come back. They would hop on while the bus was still moving.
It was a local thing to do.
It was a local thing, and we're just sitting in the back and just thinking, wow, this is very interesting.
And we just
weird.
thought, is our stuff going to get stolen? What's going to go on here? But
I remember during that ride, though, during that trip, I believe it was during that trip, that we started getting some digestive issues.
Well, no, not quite yet. No, not during the bus ride. Not yet.
Okay.
But
finally, when we got to Chefchaouen,
which is a beautiful town. If you have a chance to see it, it was really one of the highlights of our trip.
The Medina is completely painted in blue.
It's completely painted in blue, and we actually did see when we were checking out the town. We saw the guy who was the painter he was painting it blue, and I took a picture, but I don't think he liked that. So I kind of snuck.
Anyway,
in a picture.
This is the kind of place where we didn't know where we were going to stay when we got there, and so we. Kind of looked around. We saw one place that looked like it was an inn or something like that.
Oh, I thought we kind of looked on the computer at an internet cafe.
Oh, I don't know.
Well,
no,
it doesn't
I
matter.
don't think so.
No,
we did not actually.
Well,
anyway,
we did try and look. If I crop.
Anyway, so even the taxis there in Morocco, you have to haggle for the price there on the taxis. But we got into this place and we talked to the guy and we're like, okay. It seemed on the lower level, it seemed like, oh, this could be kind of nice.
Right.
And the guy told us how much it was, and it seemed pretty cheap. I think it was like 10 or 15 dirham a night.
You're haggling. What's interesting about Morocco is you're haggling to get the price down for most things, but most things are quite cheap there, actually. So, but it's a sport there. They expect you to haggle. That's
in fact, we had some friends that went to Morocco before us. And they never haggled there. They didn't even talk to us about haggling. And I thought, wow, you must have got ripped off on everything, or you didn't do what the custom was.
Anyway, so we go into this inn. We
Yeah,
go
you
up
talk
to our
for my
room.
voice is getting
we
really
go
tired.
up to our room, and there were 2 beds. One, our friend was going to stay in. Nikki and I were going to share a bed. Nikki opens the covers.
That is not true. There were 3 beds.
Oh, there were 3 beds?
Yeah, yeah, there were definitely 3 beds. You did not sleep on this thing.
I thought it was on your side. Anyway, Nikki goes to his bed. He picked up the covers of his bed only to reveal a huge, big red stain. Ugh. What was it?
It was gross. Was it like birthing liquid or like placenta liquid, or was it just
What do you mean,
something else? Did
placenta?
somebody get murdered on there? I mean, what the hell was that?
Maybe.
And why wasn't it cleaned? Why was that still being used? Anyway,
it might have been clean, but just the stain had been still.
I thought
had still set in. You know,
this is what happens when you don't plan ahead. You know,
right?
This is what happens. You get into this kind of trouble, and so what happened was I just thought, oh my God, I got to sleep on this tonight. Luckily, I had made myself some sort of makeshift sleeping bag out of like sheets I sewed together. And I basically used that, put myself in this whole little knapsack thing and just slept in there the whole night. And I didn't get much sleep. It was just, I felt so uncomfortable sleeping on that thing.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, that night though, that was the night that we started to. Now, the food was pretty interesting in Morocco, but what you do have to be careful about is not to drink any water there. You should drink only bottled water. But in addition to thinking about that the water is not sanitary, you also, well, I guess people who live there have become accustomed to it, so they don't have these problems, but you have to watch out for the vegetables are being washed in this water. And so if it's not cooked, which we've overlooked, you get what I got that night, which was pretty explosive diarrhea. And so explosive that I was in the bathroom and Nikki and my friend could hear it going on. They were laughing about it, but I was like, boy, you don't even know what I'm going through right now.
And then eventually, me and our friend, we both started getting digestive issues. And I think Max and our friend had it worse than I did.
Well, I had it the worst because I also got sick too. I had I kind of felt like I had a fever.
Anyway,
you know?
if you go to Morocco, make sure to bring medication
which is something we overlooked too, which is stupid.
Or make sure, if you have to get shots or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, so
when we got there, there was a guy down below who was hanging out with like the inn clerk, and he seemed nice, I guess, at first, and he tried selling us a weed in the beginning of the day.
Morocco is known for
not in weed, but I guess hashish. I guess it's called. Anyway, so this guy was trying to sell us hashish, and our friend Mike was like, "Okay, maybe later. Maybe I'll get it later." And wherever we went, well, why don't you tell it then?
Well, okay, so the guy was trying to sell us this weed, and everywhere we went, he would follow us the whole day. We would go into a museum, and he was waiting for us. When we came outside. We came out back outside. He was waiting for us.
Every time we thought we had ditched him, he was there trying to sell us this hash.
This was kind of how the experience is being in Morocco. Not only do you have to haggle with people, or that you should engage in the haggling, but people, if you ask for anyone for help, watch out because they are likely to badger you for some money or to try and sell you something. There's always some caveat to what they're trying to sell you something. So watch out. Even in Tangier, I tried to ask for somebody for where the bank machine was, and they wanted money for that to tell me, they were like, oh, they pretend to want to be, have goodwill and tell you where it is and everything, but then they'll try and ask you for money.
Even if you ask like a police officer for directions, they'll be like, oh yeah, my friend will show you where this place is. And it just ends up being a local that will like take you, they won't tell you where the thing is. They'll just have you follow them. And we're like, okay. And then they'll bring you to the place that you need to go, and then you're expected to tip them after that, you know?
But, if that's the tradition, I think we were young and college students at the time. And
I know, but when we got to Marrakesh, it was so late at night, and we had to do that, and we're like, oh my God, are they just leading us to our dooms here? We didn't know, you know?
Right, but I think nowadays I would have been more open to just giving a tip, because if that's part of the tradition,
All right.
But who knows? Maybe that's just their way
we really ought to like
take advantage of the tourists.
We really ought to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes.
So
actually,
anyway, so that guy. Anyway, long story short, long story long. Actually, by the end of the night, that guy kept badgering us so much, and our friend finally, just to get rid of the guy, bought some of the weed. And I think he even said at the time that it wasn't good.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't smoke, but he does. I don't know. Anyway, so that was Chefchaouen. Then we went to Fez after that, and that was really cool. That was like,
now that's really like
that was
thrown into a movie.
It seemed like the genuine
Morocco experience. And
I bought a Fez.
We
also
had some
in Fez.
friends that didn't even go to Fez, and I was like, how could you not go to Fez? That is the place to go, and that's where we haggled a lot.
And our hostel there, which was...
It wasn't a hostel.
It was a... What are they called?
It was a riat.
A riat. Is that what they're called? A riat?
It was a really nice... contrary to the place that we stayed in Chefchaouen, this place was really quite beautiful. The architecture... it was a riad.
A riad, yeah. That's what
it's kind of like an Andalusian kind of architecture. Anyway, really cool. But Fez was a real experience. We had leather jackets made there while we were there, and there was...
Well, we didn't have a maid. You can buy
we bought them there, sorry, but we had...
They do make leather jackets there, though. There is a tannery there, a well-known tannery.
And we wanted to visit the tanneries, and so, of course, you have to ask somebody, like, oh, where's the tanneries? And they'll, like, bring you to the tanneries, and then...
Well, there was this main kind of store where they made, I think, all the leather stuff that was in town, and they basically other suppliers sell them throughout town. But this was the main place where you could buy the leather there too. And this guy gives you a tour of the tannery, and it smelled so bad. It was disgusting, the smell, but it was cool to see. And then comes
I should follow up that I should say that during the time in Morocco up until that point, we saw a lot of the guys wearing these yellow shoes. They're like yellow slippers.
We called them banana shoes.
We call them banana shoes. They look like bananas. Anyway, just know that for the rest of the story.
So we go into this leather tannery not thinking we were going to buy anything there because it was going to be more expensive in that place. And the guy was showing us all, the tannery and everything, and he
was really nice.
And he was really nice. He seemed to know these American. American expressions.
We were, during our time in Morocco, we only spoke French because we didn't want anybody to know that we were American, or else they would hassle us more. And but this guy
we actually said that we were Canadian.
But this
we
guy
kept saying we were from Alberta.
We did tell this guy that we said, oh, we're from California. And he's like, oh, my wife, she's from Santa Monica. And we're like, oh, really? Wow. I don't know if he was lying.
I don't think his wife was really from Santa Monica. I think he just knows... He knows California and he knows Santa Monica.
He actually eventually...
Los Angeles.
He eventually started speaking to us in English because he had claimed that, oh, I can actually speak English better than I can speak French. And we're like, all right, go ahead with English.
He could. He knew expressions and... Anyway,
he did speak English well.
Okay, anyway, after he showed us the tannery,
he did give us quite an extensive tour.
After he showed us, the tannery, then he went to a spiel to try and sell us some stuff. And we just took a hard no. We said, we're not going to buy anything here.
Because it was expensive.
It was expensive, and he, even by Moroccan standards...
And he's like, just pick out
or
something.
Even, I say, even by American standards, it was expensive.
He's like, just pick out something, pick out something, and we'll discuss. And we're like, finally, we kind of indulged him. We're like, all right, let's try to find something cheap,
Right. Well, at first we were kind of looking at the leather jackets, and then he brought in this other guy who had a white coat on, as if he was the expert on it, to make him seem more legitimate, because like a scientist or something like that. And the guy was like explaining, oh yes, this is the finest cuir, and cuir is how you say leather in French. And so
Cuire, by the way. Yeah.
no E at the end.
Are you sure? Oh.
I'm pretty sure. Anyway, and it was just a funny thing that they needed to have this guy to legitimize his selling points. It was just a really funny thing.
Finally, we're like,
anyway,
okay,
finally
these
we said,
leather jackets are too expensive. And he's like, well, pick out something. And our friend found like a purse for his sister. And we found this leather kind of bag for our messenger. Well, not messenger bag.
It was almost like a satchel kind of a thing.
For our older brother. Because he used to use those at that time. And we're like discussing the price with the guy, and he told us how much it was, and we're like,
no.
Just like, there's no way, it's too expensive.
He's like, we're just like, all
right, we'll leave. And he's like, no, just how much are you willing to pay? He's like, we're like, we can't pay for this. We don't
want it.
He's like, just tell me how much, and we're like, we don't want this. And he's like, then
he gets a calculator out,
and he's like, all right, just put the price in this calculator and then show me. And we're like, why do we have to put it in the calculator? He's like, just type it in the calculator and show me.
It's like, what does that have anything to do with it?
And so we indulged and we put the price in the calculator and we turned around and showed him. He's like, you guys, you're killing me. You're killing me here. I can't do it for that.
Right, and then he's like,
we're like, you told us how much to do for it.
And then he's like, look, you can buy this leather satchel, and you can have this purse. You can have your cake and eat it too. And we just like, well, he knows these American expressions is pretty good.
It was funny that he was saying you can have your cake and eat it too, and we were like, look, we can't do it. And he's like, but you can have your cake and eat it too, and
we're thinking, no,
just
we
this
can't.
Calculator, this calculator situation was so funny, and like we couldn't just tell him the price. We had to type it into the calculator.
Right, to try, again, almost like to
legitimize
like that there was some sort of business transaction going on. Or it was just a funny situation.
And finally, after a long bout of negotiation,
we got him
down to a price that he was not comfortable with.
He was not comfortable with. But it's like a sport there, this haggling thing. And they know when they have to admit defeat or, if they won. And basically, he was admitting defeat.
And so by the time when we went up to ring the cashier to ring us up for the items, I think the guy
who was ringing us up,
the guy, I think he was like the boss, and the guy that had tried selling the stuff to us was like embarrassed by how much we were buying him for, because how much we got him down to. And so as we were
the boss, or it seemed like the boss, I think he was a little bit more tame and wasn't trying to sell us anything because he was the boss. But so the owner rings us up, or the guy who seemed like the owner, he rings us up, we pay for our stuff, and on our way out, we run into the guy who'd been selling us this stuff the whole time, the guy who'd given us his whole spiel, and he had his head down in shame, and in his hand, he had these two shoes, these leather yellow shoes that we'd seen all along in Morocco, and he said, here, buy the shoes, it's a good parting gift,
And we said, no, we don't want to buy those, they look like bananas. And he said, no, they're good bananas. And we were starting to crack up at that. He called them good bananas, you know? And he was so embarrassed.
He was so embarrassed by how much we gotten those other goods down for, that he wanted some last-ditch effort to preserve some dignity that he had. But we just said, no, we're not going to buy that.
And here's the real kicker. By the end of our stay in Morocco, our last city we were in was Marrakesh. Me and my friend Mike, we were looking at those shoes, those yellow banana shoes, and we thought, we can't leave this country without buying them. And so we bought our own pairs of yellow banana shoes. I regret not buying a pair for Max.
I had to leave earlier than
leave early. I think the case was that I didn't have enough money on me to buy 2 pairs of shoes, and at that point we had to leave to catch our airplane back to Lyon. But we bought those yellow banana shoes, and guess what? I still have them today. We even used them for a funny sketch that we did, video sketch that we did with our older brother.
Right. It was
They are really funny, and they're all completely leather too. If you're not flat-footed like me, I imagine they're very comfortable.
I still have a wallet, or I do have it, but I don't use it anymore. But I had a leather wallet I got in Fez. I have a leather jacket that I got in Fez.
I don't know what happened to my leather jacket that I got in Fez. But Fez was a real trip, man. It was a crazy experience.
Right. But even what was really crazy, well, this wasn't really crazy, but after that, we went to Marrakesh for a little bit, and then we did this whole journey into the Atlas Mountains. And then off into, we went and visited this Berber town, which was cool. Bought this
called Ait Ben Haddou.
Yeah, what is it?
Ait Ben Haddou.
Right,
It's called the Mud City.
We had to haggle for
because the city looks like it was built of mud.
Well, we haggled for a rug that we bought for our dad. That we lost that battle.
Yeah, we lost that battle.
We haggled him down, but we lost the battle.
Even though it was a funny experience doing it, but I felt really bad about not being able to get him down more. But eventually
Anyway,
we went into the
Sahara Desert, and that was
on camels. We rode on camels into the Sahara Desert, and we slept underneath the stars in the Sahara Desert.
And that was a really cool trip. And that was a real highlight. Again,
even one of the Berbers had brought a snowboard into the Sahara Desert, and we kind of rode down the sand dunes on the snowboard. That was cool.
Again, it's this traveling. This kind of sums things up. It has this interesting amalgamation of you sort of feel a little uncomfortable because especially if you're on a shoestring budget like us in college, you're sleeping in the Sahara Desert, which is beautiful, but it wasn't the most comfortable situation, I will say, but it's beautiful and a one-of-a-kind of experience that you'll never experience, that you usually wouldn't experience in your everyday life. And so it's this weird combination of you're kind of throwing caution to the wind at times, you're sacrificing comfort, but you're also
gaining experience,
gaining a really adventurous experience, and also it's beautiful, and you're seeing these sights that you would never have thought to see in your life, and it's beautiful, and it's fun, and there is something comforting in that,
Before we end this Moroccan subject, I just want to say when we were in the Sahara Desert, the night that we were staying there, we were still having digestive problems, and we couldn't find where they had apparently a toilet or like a porta potty. We could not find that at all.
No, we could. We saw where it was.
But it looked.
We did.
Maybe
there was no light.
There was no light. It was dark.
There was no light.
People were using that.
There could have been spiders. It was in the desert.
There was toilet paper in there. We didn't know. Anyway, we had a tissue packet, and there was one piece of tissue left or something like that, right?
Well, we had one clean piece of tissue left. We also had some tissue that we had used on our noses.
And so we just thought, the three of us,
okay,
we all were like, okay, each of us gets one of these tissues in case we have to go to the bathroom, as if one tissue would be enough.
Well, no, but basically we didn't mind using the tissue that if we needed to use it come to wiping, we didn't mind using the tissue we had used for our nose on ourselves because that's all we had really.
Right. Again, this is when you're in a situation that you're already throwing caution to the wind. You say, hey, this is how I got to deal with life right now. And that's what you're going to do. And luckily, Max and I did not have to go to the bathroom at the time, but our friend did. And he just found a little pocket behind the dunes and did his business. And that was that, and he was able to do it with these little bits of tissue that we had. Anyway, that was our Moroccan experience.
Another note that we wanted to mention was that in Marrakesh, and this is kind of again a perspective of life that or another part of another culture that you don't see in your everyday life or in our everyday lives, is that when we were in Marrakesh, we were sitting down to eat one night. And it was outside, and
there are these locals that
we
are
were
just
eating this chicken, and there was these locals that were hovering around us while we were eating. And as soon as we finished eating,
we got up,
and there was only mostly bones on our plates.
The locals just went for our scraps, just
like vultures,
fighting over the bones. And some of them were just putting the bones in their pockets, and it really made you think how sad things could be in a third world country, and how lucky we are to have grown up in America, actually.
Well, not just America, but, because there are, people, there's poverty in America, too.
We're privileged enough to travel to Morocco to experience something that, these people experience on an everyday basis, and it's not so glamorous for them.
Right.
And so, yeah, just
Not so glamorous. That's putting it lightly.
But for us, it's a glamorous life to be able to travel to these.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's not. It's for us to be able to travel to these places. We have these stories to tell, and they're kind of cool stories. But for them, it's everyday life, and it's not fun actually.
Right. It's a sad situation, but that is what you get from traveling. You get a different perspective on life, and you realize the fortunate things that you have, and you realize you realize that other people live in different ways, and some people live in what seems to be. I remember in Chefchaouen that there would be these women that were cleaning the clothes in the river, and that's just regular life for them, and they don't think. I guess it's not. They don't think of it as being, in a unfortunate or anything. That's just their normal lives. And so I think that's just a different perspective on life. We take for granted the things that we have in America, and I think going to these different places in the world gives you another outlook on how lives are spent.
That said, happiness is very subjective, and you can't compare your happiness to the living circumstances of somebody in Morocco, because their life experience is very different from ours.
That's right, but that's what's cool about going to other countries is you see how those lives can be.
Sure,
and it
doesn't mean it's not. But I'm not saying that you're not allowed to feel unhappy or unlucky.
Of course not.
In what would be considered privilege compared to somebody living in Morocco,
Well, yeah. I mean, that's why people say money can't buy you happiness. I will say though, money can buy you, it can alleviate some stress for sure.
A lot of stress it can alleviate.
For a lot of people, yeah.
I mean,
which can make you happy actually. But people, again, as you said, Nicky, your circumstances won't necessarily produce happiness for you. You know? I mean, everyone has their own, unique lives, and how you deal with that Anyway, I don't know.
Anyway, traveling can be fun. It can be hard. It can be exhausting, and it can be tiresome, and it can be rewarding. But one thing remains is that you have stories to tell at the end of the day.
Stories to tell.
And we hope you've enjoyed our stories today.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky.
Tune in next time. Once again, if you like what you heard or saw today on our special edition of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky and like to view or listen to more content from us, please visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/splittinghairs, and become an exclusive member today.